Good evening, everyone. Chanukah Sameach, Chodesh Tov.
כבוד הרב, חנוכה שמח. ממש טוב. How are you?
God bless you, Baruch Hashem. How are you, Esther?
Doing much better, Rabbi.
Didn't hear from you a long time.
I know. I apologize.
It's okay. Don't worry. I hope everything is good.
Thank you. Yes, much better now.
Nice to have you back.
Thank you.
God bless. Okay, very good. I'm glad things are better. That's good. Okay, so let's get started. Here we go. Okay. Yep. Yeah, so we finished the chapter. I think we're going to the next one. Kuf Ein Tet. So it says here in the Torah, Gamar seudato v'natal yadav mayim achronim asur le'echol. Right. So now we're finished with the meal, right? You can't eat forever, right? We're done with that. So now we're talking about the next step, which is mayim achronim. That means the final washing before you do Birkat Hamazon. So what he says here is like this, a tour that once he did mayim achronim, he's not allowed to eat anymore. Why is that? Because it's considered to be like you decide to finish the meal, That's it. So now the only thing you can do is to say Birkat Hamazon. There's no other options for you here. So says Bet Yosef regarding that, בפרק כיצד מברכים, רב פאפא יקלע לבי רב הונא, ביד רב נתן, right? So we're talking here that these rabbis got together in this rabbi's house, and Batar the Gamre said they would Seudatayu. After they finished the Seudah, Aitu Lakamayu Midi Lemechal, right. So then they brought to them something to eat. So I guess it was some kind of a dessert or something, or whatever it was. Okay, so it says, right, that Shakal Rab Papa Veka Achil, right? So Rab Papa took it and ate it. Amrele Lo Savar Mor Gamar Asur Merechol. So the rabbis asked him, but wait a sec, how did you eat that? Don't you hold, right, that once you're done, you're not allowed to eat anymore? Amalu Silek Itmar, right? So he says that was said when Silek, right? So what is Silek? that means that it could be that they remove the table or they remove the food, whatever it is, right? Something like that. So once that's done, that's when you're not allowed to eat anymore. So says the Gemara there that halacha is not like any of these teachings. Ela ki hadi amar Rav Chia bar Asher. Right? It's like this rabbi said, Amar Rab shalosh techifot hen. So he said that this rabbi says in the name of Rav, there's three techifot, right? Now, what is techifot? Right? There's a word in Hebrew called techef. Anybody know what that is? Ooh. I'm sorry, I forgot to bring up the screen, right? Are you guys there? You listen to me?
Yes, Kavod
You're
Okay,
here.
I forgot to bring up the screen. I'm sorry, I apologize. Anyway, okay, nobody said anything, so I just went on. Okay, so anyway, right, there's a word in Hebrew called techef. David, you know what's techef, David?
Uh, please tell me.
The word techef in Hebrew means, you know why I ask David? Because he lived in Israel. So, but that was in his younger days, when he was a kid. So the word techef means right away. Right, so he says right over here, the Gemara says here, right, there's three things that you have to do right away, like one next juxtaposed to the other. That's what it means, techifot. Right, so techef lentilat yadayim beracha. So what does that mean? Right away, after you wash your hands, you have to do blessing. Right? So we already had this Gemara one time when we talked about the issue of washing your hands before the meal. Right? That you have to right away. When you wash your hands, you have to eat right away, or whatever. You have to bless right away. But some people said, right, that really applies to my machronim, the later washing, right, the last washing. So that's what we're talking about here. That it's referring to the my machronim, the later washing. Okay, so anyway, right. Uh, so he says, right, Rashi says that the halacha is not like any of these opinions. אין סיום סעודה תלוי לא בגמר ולא בסילוק אלא במים אחרונים. So what does that mean? Right, that we had several notions over here that we entertained, which is one was that when do we consider to be the end of the meal? One said that when you stop eating. The other one said when you remove the table, whatever. But the truth is, right, we don't paskin like that. So how do we paskin? That when is the meal considered to be over? When you when you when you do my machronim. That's over. That's it. So there's no way to eat after that. So if you want to eat more, what you gotta do is do birkat hamazon and then eat whatever you want right afterwards. Okay, so that's the halacha. It says that's what Rashi says. משנתן אסור על לאכול, ומה שכתב רבינו פירש רש"י עד שיברך ברכת המזון. Right, so Rashi explains, right, until he does ברכת המזון, he's not allowed to eat. פרק ערבי פסחים, it's over there in פסחים. ק"ג עמוד א', מייטה עובדא דתלמידי דרב הבו יתווה בסעודה, והבה כאe עליו רב יבה סבא אמרו להב לן ונברך, right? So there is such a thing like this, by the way. We're even accustomed to do this until this day, which is that before we do Birkat Hamazon, we do Zimun, So this is how we start the Zimun. Havlan v'nivrich. What does that mean? It's in Aramaic, it means, right, let's bless now. L'sof amru Havlan Havlan v'nishte. And then, right, they told him, let's drink now. Amar lehu Hachi amar Rav, Kiman de'amritu avlan v'nivrach, itzar lechu ben shteh. So, but he told them, no, you cannot do that. Why? Because once you say havlan, right, which means that you're doing Birkat Hamazon, now you're not allowed to eat anymore until you do Birkat Hamazon. My tama de aschitu da'ataychu. Why is that? Because you already diverted your attention away. You diverted your concentration away from the meal. That's it. You're done with that. Uperesh Rashi aschitu da'ataychu mishtia ve'asur lemishte. So says Rashi, right? You're not allowed to drink anymore. Al de'achar Birkat Hamazon until you have to do the Birkat Hamazon. V'lichora mashma de'asur lemishte afilu ivarech beri. So it says, right, that implies that it's forbidden to drink even after if he says Borei Peri Giffen. Rambam. That's what Rashbam. That's what we see in the Rashbam Sham over there. V'chen dat Rashba also Rashbam Per Kitzad Mevarchin Aval Per Kisi Adam Itanami. Right. So in this parak it says, right, Lehai Uvda Mai Shinami Talmidei Derav Dehavu Yatve Beseudata. So there's a story over there, right, where he brings a story there. That what's the difference between what the Talmidim of Rabbi used to do, that when they were sitting in a seudah, Rashi explains, Sham kevan de amar hav livrich gale da bedate de gamar seudata. When you say, right, let's bless, you already revealed that you want to finish the meal. Ve'asur lishtot ad shevarech. So you're not allowed to drink until you bless. Lefanav shen mitztarfin the seudah rishona. Because it doesn't combine anywhere anymore to the first meal. Katua Tosfot says what Tos Perish Bekontras. Right, Rashi calls. The Tosfot calls Rashi Kontras. That's his nickname for Rashi. Would you like to be called a nickname like that, Kontras? So, what does the word Kontras mean, by the way, in Hebrew? Kontras means margin. So why does Tosfot call Rashi the margin? Anybody have an idea? This is for extra credit, I'm giving extra credit. Okay. So he calls him the margin because Rashi is written on the margin of the page. If you ever noticed, right? You ever look at a Gemara before? He's on the margin there. Right? That's why we call it that like that. Okay, so anyway, right? So when you see the word kuntras, it means in Tosfot, it means he's talking about Rashi. V'chen Rabbeinu Hananel, this is also Rabbeinu Hananel, Asu, he also said, Lechul mishte im lo tivarchu, Borei Peri Giffen. He also says like that, you're not allowed to drink anymore until you do, until you bless Borei Peri Giffen, because now it's a new meal already, it's something new. But he says if you do Birkat Borei Peri Giffen, you are allowed to drink before Birkat Hamazon. So they brought some sources for this, whatever. That's what the Rosh says also. Kisui Adam, that's a parak, right? Where is that? In Chulin. The Kaim Perush Zed, he also supports this commentary here. Okay. כתב עוד, ויש מפרשים עשו למשתה עד דמברחיתו ברכת המזון. So he says there, right, that as we said, you're not allowed to drink until you do Birkat Hamazon. So it doesn't make sense. He says it's not really. It doesn't resemble the. It doesn't resemble the source, right? What we're talking about here, our discussion. Also, it says Psachim. Uvda. It brings from this story, Raya, proof. To the one who blesses for the first cup and the cup of the blessing, the Birkat Hamazon or Birkat Hamazon. So that's considered like the end of the meal, but so you have to bless. When it comes to drink, one pek, kol basar, and also it says in Chulin Kuf Zayin Amud Aleph, Gabe Shamash Mevarech Al. called prusa or prusa, that the servant, right, whatever, the say waiter, has to bless on each piece of bread. We already spoke about this before. Lo mashma sesayich levarech birkat hamazon. So it doesn't imply that he has to do birkat hamazon, just he has to bless hamotzi. Midlo kama mevarech achar kol prusa prusa. So, Alma, since he didn't say to bless after every piece of bread, Alma hesechat dat zokako the bracha rishona. So you see from there that the interruption in the right the in the concentration in the causes him to need a new bracha. First blessing, hamotzi. Im רוצה לאכול, if you want to eat, או לשתות, or drink. לפי שכבר נסתלקה ברכת ראשונה, כשהסיח דעתו מלאכול. Why? Because once he already stopped eating in that meal, he needs now a new blessing, או לשתות, or to drink. אבל אין הסחת דעת מזכיקו לברך על מה שאכל ושתה. But he says, diversion of the mind doesn't really require you to do ברכת המזון though. וקודם שיאכל וישתה, so before he eats and drinks, before eats and drinks, another time. The mind nafkamina bezeh. So he says, what is a practical application of this? Im yochal pam if he eats again, bivarech birkat hamazon, does birkat hamazon, ashte seudot, right on the two seudot. ולא מצינו שיש חשש הפסק בין מעשה לברכה האחרונה. So we don't find that there's a concern of interruption between the last blessing, rak ben bracha rishona, only between the first blessing the mas and doing eating. Chashu leafsik, they were concerned about making interruption. Kagon ben netilat yadayim berkat hamotzi. For instance, like between washing the hands and doing hamotzi. But he says after eating though, calls man sheno all the while that he's not hungry. From that meal, he can still bless birkat hamazon. And now what you told them, Rav Yeva itzar lechu lemishteh, that he told them, right, you're not allowed to drink. Even though he didn't know, im hayu rotzim lishtot, he didn't even know they didn't want to drink. Ayidei bracha, by way of a blessing, im lav. Moreh haya lahem shechayvim levarech. He was showing them that they're obligated to bless. V'chin katav Sham Ran. So Ran also says, V'chin katav Rabbeinu Yonah perek ketzad mibrachim. So that's what the Rabbi Danielov says also. Regarding this thing about blessing right and washing right after, one after the other. The Rif also says in Psachim, he explains like this, right? You're not allowed to drink perush mishum deka akre tatayu mimishtia, because you're right. You already have right, diverted your mind away from drinking. So therefore, if he wants to come back and drink, he has to bless again. That's what the Mordechai says, right? So he says, since all these rabbis agree, right, to one opinion here, but that Rambam says, the Rambam I'm going to explain, he says, the opinion of the Rambam I'm going to explain this in this chapter, he says. So what are we talking about here, right? Just to recap this whole thing here. I'm reading to you a lot of things, but we have to also get the main idea, right, of what's going on. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about once a person has finished a meal, is it possible for him anymore to drink, even without by way of making a blessing, or does he have to do first birkat hamazon and then drink again right afterwards? Okay, so let's move on a little bit. How much do we have here? Let's see. It's a long one. Okay. It's like most of the chapter. Okay. Anyway, so we'll see. Maybe we can finish it today. Possible. So we'll move on. Okay, so it says like this. ויש לדקדק בדברי רבנו. So he says we have to now analyze the words of the Torah. שנראה מדבריו. So it seems from his words, שאף על פי שנטל ידיו, even though he washed his hands, יכול לאכול ולשתות קודם ברכת המזון. He can still eat and drink before ברכת המזון. והוא שיברך עליו תחילה, but he has to bless on it. ואינם מכוונים. So he says that's not correct. דהה מדברי הראש בפרק כיצד מברכים, because from the Rosh he says, right, לא משמע הכי, it's not implied like that. שהרי כתב ולא תלכתה הכי, because he says the halacha is not like that, אלא כל זמן שלא נטל ידיו, all the while that he didn't wash his hands, יכול לאכול, he can still eat. והיה אמר הבלן בניבריך, but if he said הבלן בניבריך, let's bless, right? כי נטל ידיו דם, it's considered like he washed his hands already. That's how we paskin, by the way. You know, once you wash your hands, or you said Havlan v'nivrich, that's it, right? There's no more chance to eat and drink anymore until you do Birkat Hamazon. Okay, so goes on. כנטל ידיו דמן, כפרש Rashi like a Rashi says, Rashbam, the Pershu keman de'amitu Havlan v'nivrich, because they explain like this, right? Rashbi and Rashbam. Once you said, let's bless, right, in Aramaic, whatever, it doesn't matter which language is. Asur lechul lemishte, you're not allowed to drink anymore, ad shemevarchitu birkat hamazon, until you do birkat hamazon. Ve'esh mechalkin ben shtiya le'achila. So it says, right, some differentiate between eating and drinking, it's not the same thing. But it says it doesn't make sense to say that. Okay, so this was Mashma midbarav. So it says implies from his words the natal yadav asur lechol ad sheyivarech birkat hamazon. That if he already wash his hands, he's not allowed to eat until he does birkat hamazon. Umishum hachi katab delperush Rashi berashbam. That's why he says, right, according to Rashi and Rashbam, havlan v'nivrich shaben netal yadav. So saying, right, havlan v'nivrich is considered like the same thing as washing your hands. That's already like you're done with the meal. In either way, right, he's not allowed to bless, eat right, until he does birkat hamazon. But according to the other commentaries, enam shavim, they're not really equal. What does that mean? Washing your hands is not equal to saying havlan v'nivrich. Enam shavim shehare behavlan v'nivrich eno tzarich levarech birkat hamazon. So he says because with Havlan v'nivrich, you don't have to do birkat hamazon. Lemafreya u'benatal yadav tzarich mikol makom. But when you wash your hands, you do have to do birkat hamazon. Mikol makom mashman denatal yadav l'divrei hakol asur lechol. So, but it implies either way, right? That once you wash your hands, my machronim, everybody agrees you're not allowed to eat after that. Ad sheyivarech birkat hamazon, until you do birkat hamazon. Al ma she'achal, right? Regarding of what you ate already, you have to bless on that. וכן כתב רבנו יונה, that's what it says רבנו יונה, שאחר שנטל ידיו, that after he washed his hands, אין לו לשתות, that he shouldn't drink, אפילו בברכה, even with a blessing. So he says it's not because of diversion that he's saying this, because diversion does not really require to do a final blessing. Regarding what he ate. We already explained. So he says, really the reason is because what? Since it is right, we hold that you have to do the blessing right after you wash your hands. So therefore, once he washed his hands, in order to be ready, right, to bless Birkat Hamazon, so it's considered like you already started Birkat Hamazon. So therefore, you're not allowed to eat or drink now at this point. At all. But when it comes to Havlan B'nivrich, so then you will have only the issue of diversion, diverting your mind already, Mishum hachi keshivarech techila. So because of this, right, when he blesses first, Amma sherotzeh lechol, regarding what he wants to eat now, Sagi, that's good enough that you can get away with that. Mizeh tam, so he says, because of this reason, en le'apsik ben mayim achronim lerecha. They shouldn't interrupt, right, between mayim achronim and the Birkat Hamazon. Afilu b'sicha, even, you shouldn't even talk, he says. So this is also an important question, right? Are you allowed, after you do mayim achronim, are you allowed to talk at all before you do Birkat Hamazon? So here he's telling you not to do that. Like it says in Brachot Mem Bet Amud Aleph, Techev Netilat Yadayim Bracha. Once you wash your hands, you have to do the blessing right away. So it implies that everybody agrees that this is talking about Mayim Achronim. Share Apilu Harosh, even the Rosh Sover that he holds, the Kaya Mayim Rishonim, that is referring to Mayim Rishonim. Lav Lema'et Mayim Achronim Ata. It's not coming to exclude מים אחרונים. שהרי כתב רבנו בסימן ק"ז because Rabbeinu said, right, in the siman, which is chapter 166, the Adonai Baruch he says, right, that the Rosh says, Hayara Gil Af Berishonim, that he, right, even after the first washing, right, before the meal, we already mentioned this before, right, Shelo Le'apsik, he wouldn't talk there either. So you see from there that you shouldn't interrupt from doing mayim achronim to Birkat Hamazon, even by talking. All the more so you shouldn't eat. And even the blessing before the eating. So he says the words of Rabbeinu here, the Torah, needs investigation. Why investigation? Because he didn't paskin like the Rosh, right? So that looks very suspicious, right? He usually goes like the Rosh, his father, So if that's the case, why did he miss the mark over here, right? And say something else. Okay, that's interesting. So moves on. But that Ran pek kisuyadam. What about the Ran? He says he differentiates between eating and drinking. He says not the same thing. So he says because it doesn't have, it's not something fixed, drinking. So when they said, right, let's bless, it's considered to be like he changed his mind, but then he has to bless the Birkat Hamazon. But he says when it comes to eating, right, it's fixed. It's something permanent more. So because sometimes it happens, right, that a person is sitting in a seudah, a little meal, and then it became like a bigger meal, right? All of a sudden, they got some more food, right? Some extra courses came up, right? So it became a bigger meal. Mishum hachi, afilu gamara, even right, even if he finished, afilu silek, and even if he, they remove the table, mutar lechol ad sheitol yadav. He's still allowed to eat until he washes his hands. And he doesn't have to levarech, doesn't have to bless. So it seems like he says from his words, that story with Talmidim of Rav in the Gemara, when they said this, right, let's bless. They weren't allowed to drink. They were not really coming to eat, or they were coming to drink just. And now which he said, right, that they were sitting at a seudah, and also when they told him let's bless, so it implies that there was eating over there. They weren't just drinking there, according to this implication here. Yesh lomar de enachinami. So he says there is to say that, right, indeed, what they did was they ate a little bit, just to to make the drinking more pleasurable, right, more pleasant. But really, they were not coming there to eat, right? They were just coming to levarech. I'm sorry, one second. Levarech, right, to bless. לא הייתה אלא לשתייה, right? It was only for drinking, I'm sorry, I didn't say it right. ויותר נראה לפרש דברי הר"ן, so it says it seems more probable to explain the words of the Ran, תבואים לאכילה כאמר, that they were talking about, right, eating really, actually. To have a siruk l'shtiya, because when it says, right, that let's bless, that means you're removing the drinking. Ve'asur lishtot, you're not allowed to drink below bracha without a blessing. Mutar lechol, but you're allowed to eat. Ela dekasher de'me'achar she'eno matzrich. But it says difficult. Why? Since it doesn't require bracha l'achila, the blessing for the eating, eno bedin shetzarich bracha shtiyas. And then why would you need blessing for the drinking? It says shebeota seuda kevan delechule tekule chada seudahi. So he says because shtiyah, that since at that meal, right? Everybody, everybody was drinking there. That was the main purpose there. Patar achila greda. After a little bit eating, kushem sheno matzrich bracha lema sheochal. Just like it doesn't require a blessing for whatever he ate. Kach eno matzrich bracha lema sheishteh. Also, it doesn't require for what he drinks either. באותה אכילה, without eating. לכן דת רבנו יונה, that's what it says in רבנו יונה, לחלק בין האכילה לשתייה. He differentiates between, right, eating and drinking, just like the Ran. שכתב גבי הד ימינן, because he said, right, regarding that which we said, ולתי הלכתה ככל הנה שמטת. That the halacha is not like those opinions, אלא כל זמן שלא נטל ידיו לברכה. So he says the halacha is that as long as he didn't wash his hands to do birkat hamazon, matzah achil can still eat. So he says, even though regarding wine, kivan shesilek dato milechol, since he already intended to stop eating, and he said, let's bless. So he's not allowed to drink until he blesses. The yana pot. Eno ken, but he says when it comes to the bread, it's not so. Ela afal pisha silek yadav, even though he removed his right milechos, he stopped eating. Vafilu sileko shulchan, even if they remove the table altogether, also. Im matzah lachazor lachilato, if he wants to return and eat, en tzarich levarech pam achet, doesn't to bless again. Shekol shenon natal yadav levarech lo nistalek legamre meachilat apat, because all the while they didn't bless birkat hamazon, he still hasn't stopped eating. Basically, he still has that option to eat more. So, right, I just want to recap this, guys, for you, because I don't want you to get confused with all these opinions here. But here we have several opinions going on, a lot of variations going on here, right? So let's just right, summarize them, so we understand what we're talking about. The question is like this, right? When you finish your meal, okay, there's 2 points where you're done with your meal. One is when you say Havlan v'nivrich, which means let's bless. And then the other one, which is when you do my machronim, when you washed after the meal, my machronim. I hope you guys do this, by the way, my machronim. Because the Ashkenazim, some of them, some of the rabbis, they say you don't have to do my machronim. The custom by Ashkenazim like this. Some Ashkenazim are not particular about that, but the truth is, you really should. So therefore, right? Don't forget about that, because it says in the Zohar some strong words about this. It says in the Zohar, if you don't do my machronim, you do birkat hamazon. What happens is, right, that it's not accepted, the prayer. So good, because comes the Satan, and messes it up if you don't do my machronim, So therefore, right, the person should be very careful about doing my machronim. So what does that mean, my machronim? That means when you finish your meal, right, you pour a little bit water on your fingertips, right, just like up to your knuckle. You don't have to do a lot. Like half the finger is enough. You don't need a lot of water. According to the simple meaning, the reason why we do my machronim is because your hands are filthy, from the meal. So we want you to be clean, your hands for Birkat Hamazon. It's not respectful, to do Birkat Hamazon with your hands dirty. So therefore, a person should be careful about that. There's also other reasons, right? Melach sedomit, sodomite salt, right? Another thing, reason why they said you have to do by machronim. But the truth is, sodomite salt today, we're not so concerned about it, unless you're living in Sodom, right? So, right? I want to tell you guys something really funny, though. I remember when I was in Israel. One time I went to visit Eilat, which is in the south, all the way down there, right? And it's like very close to Saudi Arabia there. So, so what happened was, right, that as we were driving by, towards the south, we passed through the area of the Dead Sea, because the truth is, that there's two seas over there. There's the Dead Sea, which is the salty one. The one that you float on, you can't drown there, right? Nobody drowns in the Dead Sea. It's too salty, right? That's the Dead Sea. So, and then when you get to Eilat, that's not the Dead Sea over there. That's the Red Sea, right? So, right, that's where we're having all the problems over there, from those Temanim over there, right? The Yemenites over there, right? So that's a different sea, But before you get to Eilat, you pass through the Dead Sea, you know. And guess what, right? That's where Sodom and Amorah was, over there. That was exactly the location there, by the Dead Sea, you know. So right, the story goes in the Bible there, right, in the Chumash, that it became like salty, that area. God turned it into salt. After He overturned those cities. So what happens is, right, that place, since then, has always been an area of salt. Basically, it's like full of salt there. So, right, Israelis are very practical people. So what do? Right, they built like a salt factory over there. Where they like, they take out salt from there. From the right, it's like sea salt. They harvest it there, whatever. So they mine it right from there, and there's like a factory there. So one time I passed by there, I was like, oh, okay. Well, here it is, right? Sodomite salt, there it's right there in front of your eyes. Okay. Israel is the land of the Bible, You see
There's a
everything.
documentary about that on YouTube.
Okay. Yeah, I saw it with my own eyes, I was passing by with the bus. Okay, so whatever, right? Anyway, so that's where it comes from, the sodomite salt. Right? So they say, that sodomite salt can blind a person's eyes, and that's the reason. One of the reasons why the rabbi said to do my machronim, that it shouldn't get into your eyes. That stuff, sodomite salt, whatever. So anyway, right? Today we're not so concerned about it unless you're driving by there like I was, right? Otherwise, we're not really so concerned. But anyway, right? So those are the reasons why we do my machronim, So it's a very important thing. If you want your Birkat Hamazon to be accepted. So make sure you do that, right? You don't need a cup for that, by the way. Just do it. You can do it straight from the sink. Okay, just make sure you do a little water there, right up to your knuckles, and that's a big thing, after you do a meal. So anyway, right, what we're saying is like this: once you've done my machronim, right, your meal is done, right? So says the Bit Yosef, according to all the opinions, okay. Once you do that, you're not allowed to anymore drink or eat unless you do Birkat Hamazon, until you do Birkat Hamazon. Because the meal is already finished. And even if you bless, that's not going to help you. And the Rosh says, right, even talking there is not allowed. You're not allowed to talk until you say Birkat Hamazon. So we're going to see in the Shulchan Aruch, right, what exactly is the halacha regarding this. But so we're going through here several different opinions about what's allowed and not allowed. So some hold that even if you say havlav and ivrich, you said let's bless, it's already forbidden at that point. Some say no, it's not forbidden until that point, right? From that point until you say until you do mayim achronim. And then, right, they agree that it's forbidden. But before my machonim, they say that what you can do is just bless, another blessing, and eat or drink there. Some say you're allowed to, right, you're allowed to eat but not drink, like we saw in the Ran here, Rabbi Yonah. So we have like several opinions going on. Very confusing. You know what I mean? But eventually we'll get into the halacha. Okay, we'll get to the promised land, as they say, right? Okay. So that's the way it is. So it says here, right. So it says once he washed his hands, my machronim, he shouldn't drink even with a blessing, right? So again, right, we see the same thing. So it says, I already wrote, right? He says that the Rosh argues with this and says, he says, no, I don't agree. We cannot differentiate between eating and drinking. In other words, they're both forbidden. Doesn't matter. Okay, good. The Rambam Katab Pek Dalet. So says the Rambam, Gemar belibo lechol. Right, this is the Rambam's halacha. We already talked about the opinion of the other Rishonim. So here's what the Rambam says. Right, Gemar belibo milechol. Let's say he already decided to stop eating. Right. Or he decided to stop drinking. Right, same thing. Now he changes his mind. Right. Oh, you know what? Let me have a little bit more. I'm a little bit hungry still. Or to drink, right? He wants to drink more, whatever it is, right? Even though he didn't change his place, right? He didn't leave the area, the room that he was there. He's still in that room. Right? So what he does is, the Rambam says, he can still bless, right? ואם לא גמר בליבו אלא דעתו לחזור. So the Rambam is telling you basically that he does have to bless again if he wants to eat or drink at that point. So what point are we talking about? We're talking about the point where he decided to stop eating. He hasn't washed his hands yet. Okay, so that's what the Rambam says. And then he says, right, but he says if he didn't decide to stop eating yet, he just wants to eat more. Right, even all day long. He went all day long. He doesn't have to bless again. That's what the Rambam says. So that's why, we say, according to Rambam, by the way, it's important to know this. I've already posted about this, once or twice. That according to the Rambam, the rule is, if a person is sitting in a room, okay, and he decides to drink something, whatever, or to drink or to eat, if he stays in that room and doesn't leave, he can with that blessing eat all day like that, as long as he didn't decide to stop eating. As we said here, once he decides to stop eating, that's it, right? It's over. But if he didn't decide to stop eating, he can drink, like water all day, sitting in the room, drinking. As long as he didn't decide to stop, he can keep going all day like that. As long as he didn't leave the room. Okay, so we paskin like this Rambam, by the way. That's what we do, the Maseh. Even though there are some poskim that kind of argue with this, whatever, a little bit, but we go like the Rambam here. Anyway, so there says Rambam, you don't have to bless again, right? One blessing does it all day. Right? So now he starts a different case here, the Rambam. Let's say there were two guys, right? Two people, whatever, right? It doesn't have to be guys, it could be girls, whatever. Two people, right? They're sitting and drinking. And they said, let's do Birkat Hamazon. They verbally said that. And Nikadesh Kiddush, right? Ayom. Or they said, like, let's do Kiddush. Why would they want to do Kiddush? Because Shabbat came in, right? That's the reason. They were in the midst of a meal, and all of a sudden, right, Shabbat comes in. So therefore, they say, "Oh, gee, it's already Shabbat. So let's let's do Kiddush." So once they say that, right, either let's do Birkat Hamazon or let's do Kiddush, right, something like that. So what's the story with that? The story is that they already finished the meal. That's it. They're done because they said that. You know. So let's see what the Rambam says about that. So it says. Right. So it's not they're not allowed to eat anymore or drink, right? Whatever, until they bless, and do the kiddush. So it's if they want to come back and drink before they do Birkat Hamazon or before the kiddush, even though right they're not allowed to do this, they would have to bless first. אחר כך ישתו, then they can drink. אבל אם אמרו בואו ונבדיל, but if they said, right, let's do הבדלה, אין צריכים לחזור לברך. They wouldn't have to come back and bless again. That's the end of the Rambam. Okay, interesting, right? The words of the Rambam are a little bit confusing, he says, right? Bit Yosef now. Udarim Toim says his words are a little bit, wondrous. Deha amre le Papa, because they told Papa, lo sabala more. Don't you hold the Gemara asur lechol? The person who finished eating is not allowed to eat anymore. So that was only talking about when they removed the table. Umashma deratza lomar shekol zman shelo sidku. So it implies that he wanted to say like this, right? All the while they didn't remove the table. Haochel mi'al shulchan. Yeah. So he's being more specific, right? We're not talking about that they removed the table. They removed the food from the table. Lo habe hesech hadat. So it's not considered to be interruption there. Mutar lechol. So therefore you're still allowed to eat. V'chin piresh Rashi. So that's the way Rashi explains. So they concluded in Gemara there, halacha is not like that. So how do we paskin that after right after netilat yadayim you have to do bracha, birkat hamazon. Elma tafilu gemar bedato. So we see right that even if he just decided to stop eating, shelo lechol od, and also they remove the food from the table. He can still eat as long as he didn't do ברכת המים האחרונים. ואם כן, היח פסק דגמר אסור לאכול. So then, how does he paskin, right, that if he finished, you're not allowed to eat? The Rabbi also already argues about this, about the Rambam. So he tries to defend the Rambam or explain the Rambam. He says, it's possible to say, right, the Rambam holds, since we find that story with the Talmidim of Rav, once he said, you're not allowed to drink anymore because he already diverted his mind from eating and drinking. So it implies from there right? That once he decided to stop eating, not allowed to anymore eat or drink. וההיא עובדא דרפפא מתארח בבית האחרים. Okay, just 1 second. Yeah, so what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to interrupt here 1 second. I'm going to do the Shulchan Aruch because I don't think we'll finish Beit Yosef today. So B'ezras Hashem, we'll do it tomorrow. But I just want to see the Shulchan Aruch, what it says there regarding this halacha. I'm just very curious about it. I'm in suspense. I'm sorry, but too much suspense for me. Okay, so it says over here, yeah, got to bring it up because this is a new chapter. So we are in Kuf Ein Tet, right? Yes. Bring it up. Okay, so says Shulchan Aruch like this. Gamar seudato v'natal yadav mayim achronim, right? He finished his meal and he said mayim achronim, he did mayim achronim. Eno yachol le'echol v'lo lishtot, right? He cannot drink or eat or drink anymore, as we said. This is the halacha. Ad sheyivarech b'kat hamazon, until he does b'kat hamazon. V'im amar havlan v'nei yicha, but if he said, right, just let's bless. He didn't wash his hands yet. So then it's like it's considered to be like a diversion, right, of the mind. So therefore, if you want to eat or drink more, you would have to bless again, right? Because you already finished your meal. Right? So according to Rosh, right, eating and drinking is the same, as we said, right? But according to Rabbi Yonan, achila shani, right, eating is different. Shafa pisha silek yado, because even though he stopped eating, milechol afilu silko hashulchan, even if they remove the table, right, the food on the table, im ratzal lachazor v'lachilato, anot tzarich levarach b'chamei echad. So according to them, he doesn't have to bless again for food, right? Only for drink. What's halacha? So it seems like the Shulchan Aruch here paskins like the second opinion, right? Which is the Rabbeinu Yonah and the Ran, and not like the Rosh, right? So therefore, the rule would be that if you already said, right, Hablan v'librich, you want to bless now, let's bless, right? So at that point, if you want to drink again, you have to bless on that, and if you want to eat, you don't have to bless. That seems to be the halacha. And then he says, because as long as he didn't do mayim achronim, he didn't wash his hands, right? He's not totally out of the meal yet. So therefore, he still has a chance, to eat and drink, right? Until he washes his hands. Okay. Okay, fantastic. So I guess we'll pick it up next time, B'ezras Hashem. We still have more to do with Beit Yosef here. Lots of excitement, right? Lots of suspense. I'm in suspense. So anyway, right, we'll see you tomorrow, B'ezrat Hashem. Thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. Laila Tov, Chanukah Sameach, Chodesh Tov, and Chazak Baruch.
Thank you so much, Kavod Harav.
All the best.
Thank you, Rabbi.
God bless.
Look, Rabbi, my menorah is still on.
Wow.
I sit out here with it during the class, and I'm downtown, and the public market is still open.
Oh, so what are you doing over there?
I'm outside. I live upstairs.
Ah, really? Oh, wow.
So instead of lighting in my building upstairs, I brought this menorah case down that my old boss gave to me to use for Hanukkah and
Wow.
lit it out here.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Enjoy yourself, Michael.
Good night, Rabbi.
Nice to see you.